famous one that says with the high praises of God on their lips and the two-edged sword in their hands, they're executing vengeance on the kings of the earth. So it's the saints doing that with swords in their hands. But people have used that verse pre-second coming and started wars, all through history. So that verse to me belongs post-second coming. That's where I believe that verse belongs. So between now and Jesus appearing in the sky, we are involved in the battle plan through prophesying, through love, through good works, through prayer. Like Moses was, because Moses didn't do a thing. Moses said, Lord, release. And all of a sudden, the Nile became blood. All Moses did was say things. He didn't do anything else.
Thank you.
Hey, Pastor Bickle, I want to thank you for taking all these questions. I know usually when I head off stage after you've done a long sermon, but I appreciate you staying here. I have a three-part question.
And just for fun, everyone just calls me Mike, just for fun.
Okay. All right, Mike, this is a three-part question, and chances are nobody else is going to have this question, so everybody else can stop listening now. But my question is...
Wait, after the tree chipmunk thing?
Yeah.
I'm ready for anything.
All right, good. My question is, I've wrestled with how to interpret Revelations for a while, and I've gone to school and stuff like that for it, not particularly for that, but for theology. And I was wondering, why would we hold the futurist position entirely, which puts all these events right at the end of time, instead of the other three positions? Would hold Nero as having a section to play in biblical prophecy, or the falling of the temple and the proselytizing of the known world, all these events that have happened. And as well, the second part to that would be leading into Jesus' own words in Matthew 24, when he says that all these things will come to pass in this generation. All these things, he kind of lists them off beforehand. Now, how are we to read that piece of scripture in light of, the end times events? And then the third part of that is just a short one. If that's the case, and if it's all in future events, then why wouldn't we not worry about it for now? Because so many things have to happen before Jesus comes back, and Jesus told us to be ready because we don't know when it's happening. Later in Matthew 24. So why would we worry about it instead of waiting for all these events to take place, rather than holding the other three positions, which would say it could happen anytime because a lot of these events have already taken place?
So I think the negative on the other three positions is that you have to ignore many of the details of prophecy. Because even the Nero stuff, you can find a strand here and there of what was fulfilled in 70 AD from the book of Revelation, but you have so many other verses you have to ignore. So it's just if you take a view of Scripture, a high view of Scripture, that prophecy is actually literal, then you can't read 70 AD and see 20% of it you could see fulfilled, maybe 30, but 70% you can't. They have to throw away the 70%. And if you have a high view of Scripture, you can't do that.
Well, can it be the case that you can hold both, like a now and then position?
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
But typically, if you hold the 70 AD position, most people throw away the other. I don't know anybody who holds both of them. Yeah, you could. The key is you want 100% fulfillment, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have 100% fulfillment, 70 AD can't even get even close to that. If you read the Scripture honestly, there's just so many holes in that. But you can say, you know what, I'm going for the full fulfillment at the end. And it has to be at the end because it hadn't happened yet. So the only time it can be happen is still yet future, because in 2,000 years that happened. And so you could have both positions, but typically if you pick one, you tend to steer away from the other. So that's the answer on that one. What's the other question?
The other questions were, if that's the case, then why wouldn't we not worry about it for now? And then what of the generations that Jesus spoke about?
Oh, I think this generation will all be fulfilled is the final generation of natural history. That wasn't 70 AD when he said, so we're still waiting for that generation. Okay, so that's why we care about that generation. There are about, I'm going to teach a class in September, October, November. I'm thinking of the 10-year anniversary first. After that's what I'm getting at, on the signs of the times. And there are about 10 or 20 signs that are, depending on how you group them together, so dynamic that are happening right now. And there's not that many things that have to be, that are yet to be fulfilled before it can happen. So I think it's all pointing to the next number of decades, and the signs are clear. If you take them at face value, and they're they're very relevant, meaning it's not just, well, they could all happen now. No, some of them are happening, some of them are not. We can look at them, we can measure them. They're not nebulous. You can actually make a list of them and go down them and see it. And so it leads me to be convinced that it's in the next number of decades that it's going to happen. And it's only this time that it's happening. And we can know, and we got to get ready for it, because we got to get our minds ready with the Scripture, get our lives in order, got to get our prayer life functioning, because we're not just going to one day suddenly be flowing in the Spirit one day. We got to go after it right now. So that's kind of a short answer to a big question.
Thank you.
Okay, as Jesus grew up knowing he was the Messiah, will the Antichrist grow up knowing who he is?
Could. Yeah, I mean, nobody knows, but I mean, you know, I think it's believable.
Okay. That was just,
Yeah, there's so much mystery. The Lord, it's almost like he's saying, I'm not going to put that in the Bible. I don't want you thinking, I mean, not thinking about it like it's bad to think about it, but there are so many details he won't give us info on, so we cannot get conjecture on it. But it's fun to talk about. There's nothing wrong with that. But we can't base it on anything in the Bible, because the Lord wouldn't put it there. But, you know, he might, you know.
thanks.
Okay.
And we'll just end with these, so we won't have anybody else come up. And just in case anyone else has a question, we'll wait on it. Go ahead.
Thank you. With Jesus' second procession, there probably will be a lot of resistors that profess and become believers.
Yes.
And my question is, when the bowl judgments start to unfold and the dashing of the nations and the infrastructure, and it's just so immense, that I can imagine that there's going to be a lot of death around that, because the 100-pound hailstones. And so I guess my question is, once they decide to become a follower of Jesus, do you think that there's a greater measure of, say, a protection for those believers? I know that once they die, they're going to get a resurrected or a redeemed body, but they won't be able to recreate once they get that redeemed body. So we're going to need people to be able to repopulate the earth. And God is so merciful, and also he loves to create life. So I think he would want to have more people to be able to repopulate. So what do you think about that? Okay,
just give me one. I mean, I followed all that, but what is the precise question? Because I followed the context.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that there's going to be a level of protection for those people?
Those resistors who get saved. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Would you comment just briefly on, this is out of 2 Peter 3:10, but the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. What is the day of the Lord, and who is the thief?
Very good question. The day of the Lord, there's two different applications of the day of the Lord. There's what is called the broad day of the Lord. That's 1,000 years. Like the day of the, it's like right there in 2 Peter. If you look at verse 8, it says that one day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. It's right there in the verse before. But so the day of the Lord, the broad day of the Lord is a 1,000-year period. Technically, it's 1,000 years plus 3.5 years, because it starts at the Great Tribulation and goes through the millennium. That's the day of the Lord broad. The narrow day of the Lord is the 24-hour period that Jesus enters into Jerusalem. So both of those are biblical concepts. So that's the day of the Lord, broad and narrow.
Is he the thief?